additional 42 litres of high-quality water every single day. But of course, the UNRWA published figures will say otherwise. So even though over the last 4 days, 1,500 trucks, 1,500 trucks have gone in, the UNRWA dashboard shows a much lower figure. Look, I think the world is slowly waking up to the UN's logistical failures. The latest ruse is that the UN only counts the trucks they pick up. Look, right now, there are 500 trucks worth of aid, 500 trucks worth of aid sitting and waiting on the Gazan side. Of Kerem Shalom. 500 trucks worth of aid languishing in a parking lot, waiting to be picked up by UN agencies. Look, it's long past time now for the UN to focus its energy on feeding Gazans rather than maligning Israel. I want to make this quite clear. We're saying to the UN, do your job. Focus on distribution and stop blaming Israel for your huge failures. And as usual, the daily 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. IDF humanitarian pause in Rafah will enable movement of humanitarian aid. Now I want to update you on the latest from the IDF's work to uproot Hamas from Gaza. In central Gaza, we began a precise intelligence-based operation to target and eliminate terrorists using aircraft and the Navy. We hit terror infrastructure above and below the ground. An armed terrorist who exited a terror tunnel next to our troops was eliminated, together with launchers. Our Navy has been assisting our ground troops in the area. And lastly, to the north of Israel, our fighter jets are striking military compounds in Aita Ash-Shab, in Khiam, in southern Lebanon, and in Nikura. So that's the end of the briefing today. I will now take your questions, which you should put in the chat with your news outlet.
So you have a question from Jay Rubin. You have a question from Hannah Julian. Has Hamas provided Israel or Qatar, Egypt, or the U.S. any evidence as to whether the hostages are still alive?
Thank you very much for that question, Hannah, about the hostages and whether or not they are alive. Look, I think it's very important that we're dealing to remember that we're dealing with a genocidal terrorist organization. Hamas, of course, have many spokespeople. Not all of them are well connected, so we should treat Hamas's comments extremely skeptically. Hostage negotiations are always sensitive and challenging, but we are committed. We know that the results of international pressure on Israel are helping Hamas. It's emboldening them and making them walk away. We want our people back as soon as possible. We know that dozens and dozens of them are alive, and we need them back. We need all of them back, all 133 of them back. So with that, we'll go to the next question, please.
You have a question from Jim Williams of Zaker International News. He asks you, this week, the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin testified before the U.S. Senate and told them that he saw no evidence that Israel was committing genocide in their war against Hamas. Does the PM think Austin's testimony will help get the truth out on the baseless claims of genocide?
Thank you, Jim, for that question. Look, we've dealt with this question of genocide so many times. Ultimately, we believe that the truth will come out. There is, of course, no such thing happening here. It's in Hamas's interest to play this libel and for it to be picked up. This is one of their key the key tools in the armory of Hamas to maximize the number of figures. But the figures have been released on the 6th month anniversary of this war, and they are quite clear. We know that 13,000 terrorists have been killed.
Recording in progress.
We know that about the same number have been apprehended, arrested, injured, so taken off the battlefield. That's at least 26,000 people which we've taken off, of Hamas terrorists and Islamic Jihad as well, taken off the battlefield. I think when the dust settles, and I think this has been said again and again, Secretary of State Austin said it, but also General Petraeus and of course John Spencer at the Urban Warfare Studies head at West Point said the same thing, that we have set the gold standard when it comes to minimizing the effect of our war against Hamas on civilians. Hamas, of course, are trying to maximize the number of civilian casualties, and we know that that's been their tactic, but it's very important for people not to fall for it. When the dust settles, it will be absolutely clear that we have killed the least number of civilians in any urban conflict ever in the history of armed warfare. Of course, every civilian casualty is a tragedy, but of course, none of this would have happened if the October 7th massacre wouldn't have happened. So every civilian casualty, in fact, every casualty in this entire war lands firmly at the feet of Hamas.